Hello and welcome. I'm Kriti Mehta. You're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a check of the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump says India will buy Venezuelan oil as opposed to purchasing oil from Iran. He said, "We've already made that deal, the concept of the deal." Days after threatening tariffs on any country supplying Cuba with oil, Trump says he believed the United States would work a deal on Cuba. Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social that he has ordered the Department of Homeland Security to, under no circumstances, get involved with protests in democratic-led cities unless they ask for federal help or federal property is threatened. Protests have broken out against US President Donald Trump across the US, with protesters denouncing Trump and ICE from San Francisco to Minneapolis. President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Ukraine was waiting for more information from the United States about further peace talks and expected new meetings to take place next week. The Iranian Army's Commander-in-Chief Amir Hatami said that the armed forces were ready to defend the Islamic Republic until the end amid aggressive posturing by the United States and allies. Indian Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is presenting her 9th Union Budget in the lower house of the Indian Parliament. Indian stock markets open on a Sunday due to the budget session for the first time in history. South Korea signs contract with Norway to supply the Chunmoo multiple launcher rocket system valued at $896.4 million, South Korean presidential chief staff said after meeting Norwegian defense minister. All right, viewers, let's now start with the top focus. US President Donald Trump has now announced that India will begin purchasing Venezuelan oil instead of buying oil from Iran. Speaking about Air Force One, Trump's comments came a day after reports emerged indicating that the US had informed New Delhi that it could soon resume Venezuelan oil imports to replace Russian crude following geopolitical shifts and sanctions on Russia. In addition to India, Trump said China would also be welcome to negotiate a similar deal with the US to purchase Venezuelan oil. Listen in to what he had to say.
But I'll tell you what, China is welcome to come in and would make a great deal in oil. You know, we welcome China. We've already made a deal. India's coming in and they're going to be buying Venezuelan oil as opposed to buying it from Iran. So we've already made that deal, the concept of the deal. But China's welcome to come in and buy oil.
All right, I now invite retired Major General A.K. Sewaj to join me in this discussion. He is a geostrategic expert from New Delhi. General Sewaj, thanks very much for joining us. Is it true? Is India really going to leave its long-standing ally Russia to buy oil from Venezuela, which now the US controls, instead of Iran?
As far as Iran is concerned, India is not purchasing oil since 2019. Remember that there was a JCPO which was signed, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, that was basically between Iran and P5+1, the permanent member plus Germany. But in 2019, in Trump 1.0, US came out of the JCPO and thereafter put economic sanction against Iran. And that is the time when we are purchasing almost about 20% of our oil from Iran, but we have to make it almost nil because the sanctions were put by the US and they only excuse sanction on Chabad. So as on today, we are hardly buying oil from Iran. Yes, we are purchasing oil from Russia. That also we have reduced it quite a bit now because the 50% tariff which have been imposed by US and especially 25% extra tariff for purchasing oil. So they don't deny the fact we want to now reduce as much as possible so that this tariff of 25% are taken out by the US. And we will like to take a Venezuela oil because what happened is the Venezuela oil is slightly thicker. Its density is more. And
Yeah.
India is one of the countries which is expert in refining such oil, especially our Adani refinery, which is there in Gujarat. So there is possibility of taking a Venezuela oil to that extent what Donald Trump is telling. Because as on today, Venezuela oil is totally controlled by US. And it's not only India, possibly China may also buy it. So Indian refineries, especially the Ambani refineries in Gujarat, are capable of refining that oil. And I think possibly to just make sure that this 25% tariff is reduced from US, this, there are huge chances that we may purchase oil from Venezuela.
How much do you think, General Sawaj, is that going to affect the oil prices?
You see, the point is, the more the oil in the market, the less is the price. And in case if there is Iran war take place in US strike on Iran and state of Hormuz will be affected, you will find the oil price is shooting up. And same way now, if we have to divert our purchase of oil from Russia to Venezuela, not going to make much difference because there are a number of other countries in Gulf also we can purchase. But certainly what will happen in Middle East, especially in case US attack on Iran, and then you will find the oil which is coming from Gulf countries, which is about 25 to 30% coming through, through the Hormuz, then it will make a difference. There is no denying that fact. The state of Hormuz will become quite disturbed. But possibly India will buy oil from Venezuela because it is a win-win situation. Somewhere you have to give to get something. Because in case we want to sign a free trade agreement, it can't be everything in our way we want. We have to also ensure that what US demand is. So it will be give and take, and if we are purchasing Venezuela oil, it can be done because our refineries are capable of refining that oil. Not too many countries are capable of refining that oil because it is slightly thicker.
General, but have you heard from any of your close contacts about any such deal in the works between India and US over buying oil from Venezuela?
Really not. But then there are rumors in the media, there are coming in print media, and that there is a chance. Because see, US is going to exploit this oil which is there in Venezuela. It is the only country which has 3 billion barrel of oil. The second country which comes is Saudi, which is 267 billion barrel. So therefore, what was the aim of Donald Trump coming to Venezuela? That was basically it wanted to take hold of the oil fields of Venezuela because it is the richest in oil. So therefore, the chances are very bright, and it can happen because as far as Venezuela oil is concerned, it will be completely controlled by US, and US will like to sell it to the country which they feel it. And I think India can buy it, and because our refineries are capable of refining. And second thing is we want to now sign a free trade agreement with the US. We have already reduced purchase of oil from Russia. I think that's a step in the right direction. It is a win-win situation for both the countries.
How long before that FTA with the US, General Sawaj?
To me, it looks like that another about 2 to 3 months it will take because we are on the last phase. India is almost done. It is only the US because it is also now realizing after we have signed free trade agreement with the EU, which is of 27 countries, and so therefore the US wanted to now sign it because this was basically FTA which we signed with European Union was master of all the FTA so far we have signed, is a mother of treaty. So therefore there is a pressure on US. Possibly in another month or two, maximum 3 months, it will be signed. It will be give and take. It will be mutually acceptable. It is beneficial for both, and it's a win-win situation. And I think we will like to purchase oil either from US or Venezuela, and also purchase defense equipment to reduce basically the deficit which is there, because as far as the trade is concerned, there is a trade surplus from Indian side because it is 132 billion trade between India and US. which we export almost 95 to 97 billion dollar, and US only export almost about 42 billion dollar. So there is a trade surplus toward India side, and that was one of the requirements of the US, that India should purchase weapons and oil. I think India will do that, because this free trade agreement will make a solid impact. Because as on today, with 50% tariff, our textile industry, gem jewelry, footwear, leather goods, they are being adversely affected. We are trying to find an alternate market for them, especially Europe, but it will take time. So therefore, it is important for us to sign a free trade agreement with US as soon as possible, because it will be beneficial for both, and especially our textile industry is really suffering.
All right, General Sivacha, thanks for joining us in this conversation. We now move on, viewers. Now, US President Donald Trump has also announced that the United States has started negotiations with European leaders on Greenland, and the deal is close to being finalized. Speaking to reporters aboard Air Force One, Trump expressed confidence that it will be a good deal for everyone, particularly from a national security standpoint. The US demand for control of Greenland has raised concerns in transatlantic relations. However, last month, Trump withdrew tariff threats and ruled out taking Greenland by force, instead focusing on diplomatic talks for greater access.
Yeah, we have started a negotiation, and I think it's pretty well agreed to. I mean, they want us to do it. I think it's going to be a good deal for everybody. Very important deal, actually, from a national security point of view. Very, very important deal. I think we're going to make a deal.
Joining me now is Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's fellow at the Hudson Institute of Tokyo. Dr. Nagao, thanks very much for joining us. Who all are really going to be the key beneficiaries of this deal over Greenland?
Agreement has happened only when all of the participants can say that they are winner. So win-win-win situation is only the way of the negotiation. So in this case, how to say that? The first actor is the United States, second actor is Europe, but the most important actor is people in Greenland. In the past, people in Greenland tried to accept China's investment to improve the airport or other infrastructure in Greenland, because China wants to expand their influence to Greenland. And that is a cause of concern. That time, the United States make pressure to the Denmark government. The Denmark government made pressure to Greenland, and Greenland was very frustrated. So that's why they are seeking the independence from the Greenland. But this pressure came from the United States indirectly. So that's why now, if the United States try to respect the opinion of the Greenland, in this case, the U.S. must invest in infrastructure in the Greenland instead of China. So that's why this system is needed, and that's why they are negotiating about it, I think. So now President Trump clearly says mood is not bad. So something like that means that the U.S. prepare something amount of the big investment for the people in the Greenland. And so they are checking the detail. And in case of the Europe, Europe will intervene in this negotiation, but more easy to negotiate between U.S. and Greenland directly. Even if the Europeans stay in that place, that is maybe solution they are seeking, I guess. So that's why the mood has improved, they said, I think.
Do you think Trump actually exploited the fact that Greenlanders already wanted independence from Denmark to go on raising his threats over acquiring the territory, and then also those tariff threats to the European countries, which he ultimately withdrew?
In this case, a little bit controversial and uncertain, because the view from the United States, Greenland is a colony of Europe, even if they're located in the American continent. So view from America, this is a colony, but America should claim. But at the same time, the view from the Europe, traditionally the US allows Europe to do, and there is no antagonistic mood about it without President Trump make pressure. So that's why Greenland is a place between the allies. So there is no problem. NATO can deal with. In this case, US can deal with Greenland. Anything they can do that militarily. So that's why the only matter recently is indeed economic part of the Greenland policy, which is investment or improve infrastructure, something like that, or the resources development also. So that's why this economic development, how to solve this is a matter, and which territory is, of course, a matter, but even if which territory maybe they cannot easy to solve, investment case or business cases, they can solve through the negotiation, I think.
All right, Dr. Nagao, thanks for your comments. I request you to stay on now. Viewers, Donald Trump has also said that he believes the US will work a deal with Cuba, expressing optimism that Havana may be willing to enter negotiations amid severe economic pressures. Trump made the comments about Air Force One, noting Cuba faces a deep financial and energy crisis with no money and no oil following the halt of Venezuelan supplies on which the island had long depended. His remarks come days after he threatened tariffs on any country supplying oil to Cuba, part of a broader pressure campaign that also saw Mexico, Cuba's top oil supplier after Venezuela, reviewing its role amid US retaliation fears. Trump reiterated his call for Cuba to negotiate, saying the island's government could choose diplomacy rather than see a humanitarian crisis deepen. The comments reflect an escalation in US policy toward Havana as Washington pushes to leverage energy pressures into a potential agreement. Listen in.
Warning that the embargo or the restriction on Cuban oil to Cuba could cause a humanitarian crisis there.
Well, it doesn't have to be a humanitarian crisis. I think they probably would come to us and want to make a deal. So Cuba would be free again. They'll come to us, they'll make a deal. But Cuba really is a problem. They have a problem. I know so many people from Cuba. But we have a lot of people in the United States right now that would love to go back to Cuba. And we'd like to work that out.
What do you want to see from Cuba? I mean, what do you need to see to make that kind of deal?
I think we're going to work a deal with Cuba. I think, we'll be kind. We have a situation that's very bad for Cuba. They have no money, they have no oil. Venezuela, they live off Venezuelan money. We're starting to talk to Cuba. Yeah, we're starting to talk to Cuba. They need help on a humanitarian basis, and we're starting to talk to Cuba. Don't forget, a lot of people that live in our country are treated very badly by Cuba. And we want them to be, they all voted for me, and we want them to be treated well. We'd like to be able to have them go back to home to their country, which they haven't seen their family, their country for many, many decades. So we'll work that. I'll be able to.
All right, I now request Dr. Nagao to join us back in the discussion here. Dr. Nagao, does Cuba really have any option other than making this deal with the US?
I think so indeed, because when we check what happened in Venezuela, the Trump administration did not demand Venezuela to change their regime, just change the policy and follow the United States is the demand. So in this case, in case of Cuba, it could be the same. And of course, Cuba deal with Venezuela instead of sending the security or the medical staff. Instead of this, Cuba receives the oil from Venezuela as a barter. But now Venezuela's oil was controlled by the United States, and Cuba cannot get the oil. So only some oil came from the Mexico is the matter. But now the United States asks any country to stop export the oil to the Venezuela. So this means that without this, the U.S. impose tariff to these countries. So in this case, Mexico faced a problem, and Mexico expressed a will to mediate between U.S. and Cuba. This negotiation, in this case, if Cuba accepts the U.S. demand to accept following the United States without changing the regime, indeed, it is possible for the U.S. to accept it. So, because from what happened in Venezuela, it is possible, I guess. So that's why if the U.S. can accept, maybe Cuba can change their policy, but it relies on the decision of the Cuban government and the decision of the influence of the Mexican government, I guess, I think.
How do you think Cuba is going to fulfill its oil gas supplies in the interim?
In case of the Cuba, there is only some limited choice. One of the choices is import oil from Russia, but in this case, there is a high possibility that Russia will demand Cuba to send the troops in Ukraine or something like that, I think. So that's why this is a very difficult choice, I believe. And other choice is, of course, as a source they are seeking, but in this case, U.S. will impose tariff to these countries. So that's why the U.S. has the advantage in this negotiation, and Cuba do not have the advantage. So in this negotiation, Cuba need to decide. And for a long time, the Cuba's regime hasn't changed. So that's why the view from the Cuban people, in this, they are tired to see the same government, I guess. So that's why the Cuban government will not change. Is not a good option for them. So anyway, they need to find a solution which is changing the policy and accept the new situation in this place. So accepting the mediation of Mexico and accepting the U.S. demand at least some certain level is needed, I think.
All right, Dr. Nagao, thank you then for joining me in this discussion. And we now move on, viewers. Costa Rica is headed into elections with right-wing populist Laura Fernandez holding a commanding lead, according to recent polls. The 39-year-old political scientist and former presidential chief of staff has captured voter support in the wake of a surge in drug trafficking and violence that has tarnished the country's image as a peaceful tourist haven. Fernandez, who has vowed to continue the tough security policies of current President Rodrigo Chavez, has become the frontrunner. The election is widely seen as a referendum on Chavez's leadership, particularly his hardline approach to crime, which has resonated with many Costa Ricans. However, this approach comes amid rising concerns over corruption, with Chavez currently under investigation. Once a peaceful haven amid regional turmoil, Costa Rica, with a population of 5.2 million, has witnessed a rise in murders and gang violence in recent years, fueled in part by the country becoming a key destination for global cocaine trafficking. Let's listen in to what a few of the residents in San Jose are saying.
Es muy importante que la gente vaya a votar, que ejerza sus derechos, que de eso se trata. Cada cual votará por su partido, votará por lo que quiera, pero lo importante es que la gente vaya a votar, y nos complace decir que por el momento todo lo que hemos averiguado, todas las voces que hemos escuchado nos dicen que están dadas las condiciones para que una vez más, como tantas veces ha ocurrido, como invariablemente ha ocurrido desde 1962 hasta ahora, los ciudadanos de Costa Rica voten.
Y si la gente va a votar, hay más democracia. La gente escogió al partido, al que quiera elegir. Ahora, los porcentajes y esa vara, yo nunca he estado de acuerdo. El que ganó, ganó, pero ya aquí, si no llega a tantos porcentajes, hay que volver a gastar plata y más plata del país otra vez.
And now on to some tech news before we wind up the bulletin. Now, Google has won a key legal victory in a long-running U.S. privacy case. A federal judge in San Francisco has rejected a consumer bid seeking more than $2 billion in penalties over Google's past data collection practices. The ruling bloc's efforts to force Google to hand over alleged profits and to halt certain ad-related data use. The case stems from a jury verdict last September, which found Google liable for collecting app activity data from users who had switched off tracking, but awarded far lower damages than sought. Google denies wrongdoing and plans to appeal, while the judge also refused to decertify the massive class action, keeping nearly 100 million users in the case. And that's all we have time for, viewers. Thanks for watching NewsX World. Stay tuned for all international news and updates.